Welcome to Caffeinated Mornings, a show built around the idea of more conversation and less presentation. We dive deeper into discussions that go beyond the surface of the work. A big thank you to our sponsors who make this show possible. Today's episode is brought to you by the award-winning, strategically driven, independent, full-service agency TDA Boulder. And we can't forget Buck Ross Productions and Coop Studios for helping us capture and share this show with you. A special thanks to The Coffee Ride for keeping us caffeinated, and to Realtor Michelle Sander and the Zeal Group at RE/MAX, CMCI Studio, Snappy Little Numbers for our theme music, and Pro Photo Rental for their continued support. In this episode, we join everyone's favorite designer and host, Jay Farrakane, for an insightful conversation with Google designers Spencer Syfrig and Kelly Dern. In this talk, we chat all things UX, getting started, going places, and the importance of letting your unique background and experiences shape your problem-solving abilities. So, get comfortable, get caffeinated, and get ready to be inspired and informed with our newest friends, Kelly and Spencer. Let's go!
I've been looking forward to this talk for a while, you guys. It's always a treat to chop it up with fellow designers and learn more about their worlds, where you come from, what you do, how you do it. So first, a few intros. Kelly Dern, senior product designer at Google and faculty here at Studio, and with a PR background, and we're going to come back to that in just a second. Spencer Syfrig, senior interaction designer, Google, also faculty here at Studio, whose origin story starts in fashion. I mean, come on, we were talking about shoes earlier. So welcome, both of you. Thank you for being here. I'm a big believer in design has this ability as a role or a marketplace to be somewhat commodity. We all show up, we do the same things roughly, right? I know how to open Figma or whatever the basic tasks are. But the thing that, to me, though, always keeps design interesting or evolving and growing is the people in it. And I think the thing that we all show up with this core set of tools that helps us do our jobs, but I think what's always interesting is finding out about people's backgrounds and how it shapes your lens on what you do every day. And that's the one thing I talk to, whether I'm talking to students or designers who've been in the field. I'm always really curious about the entry point into problem solving. And so, Kelly, I wanted to talk to you first a little bit about your background in PR. What were some of the key moments in working maybe in that industry that got you to like where you are today? Was there a touch point of where you were like, maybe this isn't for me, or what led you into the, hey, I'm going to go do UX now, which is a big nebulous world in its own right. But.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there were two moments where I was like, I think I can do the UX thing, because before I had no design skills. I had a minor in studio art and didn't really know what UX was. This was before we were really talking about user experience design and product design. And the first thing that happened is I was working at a startup in PR, and I was working with people that called themselves UI designers. This is before we're using the term product designers. And that person like went on vacation, and we needed somebody to work on a design system, which we called GUIs back then. I don't know if you remember that.
I haven't heard
it makes me sound really old. And I knew how to use Photoshop because I had learned a little bit about that in college. So I was doing the design system and starting to do some product design. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. This is really fun, way more fun than public relations, which was not a good career choice for me. And then the second thing that happened is after that job, I started working at a WPP PR agency, like a really big one. It was really stressful. I was working in the gaming industry. And then I was, not doing the best at that job. And I got fired. Me and some other people got fired. It wasn't entirely my fault. And after that, I was like, I gotta do the design thing. I gotta make this happen. So I made a really bad portfolio and I applied to a bunch of jobs. I tapped into everybody I knew. Sorry, this is a very long-winded answer. I'll wrap it up soon. I did a lot of different things. We can go and do it later. And I actually got 3 really good job offers in 2 weeks, not having any design experience. And that's how I made the transition. So I think if I hadn't gotten fired, I maybe would have gotten there eventually, but it might have taken me longer.
Well, and it is interesting because I think a lot of times when I start talking to people, we'll just put it in the caveat of ended up in design.
Mhm.
I think in some weird way you were doing design before. It's just funny that it has to have a parameter around it, you know? And like I even in my own career, I was the guy in my skate crew that was making art for guys,
Yeah.
but then it would end up on boards or it would end up on advertisements and stuff. But I didn't think about there was a field that
Yeah.
allowed you to do this. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the funny thing about, I mean, UX is hard to do as like a cottage project. Like I just feel expressing myself. I'm gonna go, do wireframes. I don't know if that
Yeah.
works that way. But it is, you can do design. I think it illustrates the point you're talking about, big D versus layout, small d, right? Design. Spencer, so your background, fashion design.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, that's a clearer boundary, right? There's a visual output to it. There's some sort of loose construct of creativity around it in the sense of inspiration and making and that kind of stuff. So, more often than not, UX is somewhat supposedly grounded in research and thinking and less emotional. How does the fashion world, that part of your background experience, influence your like work in UX today?
Yeah, I mean, I think my interest was always in fashion merchandising more than like the actual design. And I think that definitely has a clear tie to UX, like being able to sell something, be able to position something, be able to brand something. So I think that has like the direct connection. And then I think also just in fashion, like there's a million different white t-shirts out there. You can buy like a $5 Hanes t-shirt, and then you can buy a $100 boutique brand. And like the difference often is branding, but it's also the details,
Right.
like craftsmanship, the fabric, things like that. So I think like there's something about that I feel like kind of ties into UX too. Like there's a premium experience, there's a basic experience. I hope to be more on the premium experience end.
No, and that makes a lot of sense. I think that world, and actually when you bring it back into the construct of how do we help communicate, the selling of things, is a really important part, because I think even to that specific notion, and the lead up to this, we touched on it a little bit, that, we're all faculty here. So what are things that you get asked a lot? And a lot of times there's a part of a discussion will usually come up of how do I price things, and then how do I sell things? And it doesn't get talked about much in design circles. And so like, I think it's really interesting to start to think about, and I'm not a big fan of the word storytelling, but like, how do each one of you kind of, you have like people who have to buy into the ideas that you're selling. Give us a little insight on some of maybe your methods of convincing people that, hey, this is the best solution, or we really should go this direction.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think as part of our role, I think is for any product designer, and that's a big part of our role, but especially for what we do. I think that I call it storytelling or narrative arcs, whatever term you want to use. I think I used to be not very good at it. And it's something that I was working on. And it really depends on what your audience wants. So usually if I'm working with somebody new, for example, on my team, we have 2 new directors on the product management side. And I just ask them directly, I'm like, what kind of information do you want to know? Because I don't want to spend a lot of time doing this storytelling and background and talking about who the users are and the business needs and all these things, which I would typically do in a proposal, but they might just want to know, like, what is the user research that we've done and how are you tying it to the designs?
More peer selling is definitely different than,
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, exactly the same thing. And it's funny because Kelly and I don't actually work together. Like we're in the same office.
This is happen to be same company, but also faculty here. So
Yeah, but we have, I mean, the same experience. I think it's a
Yeah.
lot of it's tailoring the message to your audience. So I think like if I'm selling something to an engineer versus a design VP, like they have very different interests. Like
Yes.
the engineer doesn't care what the button says or the string. The VP is definitely going to care about that. So I think tailoring your message is like a key part of selling.
Knowing your audience is a big part of it. It is interesting too, because like, when you both are air quotes selling internally too,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And so it is an interesting thing, because the perception of selling an idea can get Mad Men really quick. If you've ever seen the Carousel episode, if you know what I'm talking about, and people are crying, and you're doing this on a daily basis, probably multiple times though during a day. And so like I think that's where I was going with this is the overlooked component of people often think, hey, I've gotten to a certain point in my career and now I should just be making stuff and people are going to take it and run with it. But I
Yeah.
think it's actually the further you get into your career, the more you have to get very comfortable with educating people. Hey, this is why I did this. And that's where it does come back to a little bit more of the objectivity. We talked a little bit about objectivity and subjectivity in it. And those are such a funny world because like even recently that topic comes up quite a bit here when we talk about design. And I'm finding myself daily, I almost waffle like, oh, today it's like very heartfelt. It should be subjective. Does emotion ever play into the selling of the work that you're doing though? Does it change the dynamic for you? Or is it like, is the work more in a place where it's like, it's all research based, it's very objective and the investment is just different?
So by emotion, you mean like my emotion about it?
Right. Like
Or
I'm super excited or I really believe this is the right thing for us to,
oh, yes.
you know, like,
Yeah.
because I've actually, I don't want to say I've been dinged by it, but I've actually driven other creative directors and stuff crazy because I'm like, no, this is the idea and we should really, drive this home.
Yeah, maybe I'll first on that one. Maybe you
I
can really
think
think of
He's like, don't put it on me. Don't put it on me.
I think the nature of our company is it's very data driven. So I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
like everything is data, based on research. I think like the initial hunch maybe like or like feeling about something
Yeah.
can come from an emotion or like a, hey, I feel strongly that this is a good idea. But I think we always have to back it up with data and research because I just don't think our hunches are going to sell something to a big company.
Wait, can I interject one thing? I
Yeah,
also
yeah.
think that at a certain point in your career or level, you're supposed to be the expert, the subject matter expert in what you do. So if you're not taking a stance on your proposal or your ideas, it's kind of seen like you're being too wishy-washy.
Mhm.
So I think although I wouldn't necessarily call it emotion, but as part of the selling process, we really have to pitch what we're doing and really believe that it's the right direction, but also tie it back to the storytelling and the research and the data.
Well, and I liked your use of the word narrative around it because I know that when I'm heading into even a creative presentation for something like whether it's a website or brand design or something like that, that I'm kind of thinking very often in the way of who am I talking to in this room? How much do I have to educate? And then how much do I have to convince? And I think that's the same in all,
Yeah.
but the original where I was going with this is that's a question that gets asked because I think it isn't formally kind of like
Thank you.
introduced to design students these days as like, hey, these are things that you're going to want to be thinking about, because then every design class would quickly become a presentation class, right? And there is a little bit of a subtlety that even when I'm trying to communicate to our students and I'm like, hey, for you to really get this idea out, you need to figure out what that narrative arc looks
Yeah.
like. And that's where I do
Yep.
defend like storytelling. So long way of asking, when you guys get ready to sell an idea, is there a stepping back of I'm talking to these people? Give me a little glimpse into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's thinking about the audience, thinking about like what's that message I want to deliver to them, and then like figuring out how do I get there. And I think like there's all different ways. I think the story arc is like an important thing. You have to basically paint the picture like here's this huge issue, like massive issue. Here's my solution. It's gonna fix it all. Everyone's gonna be happy. Tie it to whatever metrics they care about, whatever
Right.
output they care about. Yeah.
I think that one tactic that I do is like zooming out and then zooming in and then showing what your proposal is. So what I mean by zooming out is I work on Gen AI, so I work on Gemini for work. And so I can talk about what has been said about this in the industry or what's been said by like the big wigs that talk about this. And I can point to that. And then zooming in is what have different products talked about for Gen AI specific to my product. And then zooming in even more is like, what is my proposal for this specific thing I'm working on? So I think that's really helpful to kind of ground your argument in like the broader landscape instead of just saying, this is my specific small solution for my feature.
Well, and I've always kind of said, like, I don't know if you guys saw speaking of AI, the recent Pentagram project where they employed a lot of AI in the visual creative of it. And Pentagram
Oh.
took some heat
I haven't
for
seen
it
that.
recently.
Yeah.
And the point is Paula Scher, who's a very well-known
Mhm.
designer, had to get on and defend it. And I was like really proud of her for the fact that she basically told the design public that you don't understand the context of this. And that's, to me, is the most important thing. And I love that zoom in, zoom out idea, because what you're doing is you're setting it into context, because without context, design doesn't,
Yeah.
especially in product or brand, it doesn't make any sense because it's an isolated thing. And then commentary on it can be misled too. So, all right, switching gears a little bit. Still questions that I get asked by designers a lot of times, hey, what should I be? And you get asked this as well, but like I hear a lot about what should I be working on skill wise? What should I be focusing on? Where should areas that I want to build my portfolio towards? I have my kind of go-to answers for that. But if I kind of peel back the onion a little bit, I really find out what they're asking is, should they be specialists or generalists, right? Like,
Mhm.
meaning like, should I just have all these different skills and be that kind of unicorn thing? Or should they be, really specialists? So Spencer, do you see a value in being a specialist versus a generalist in UX? Or is it like, particularly like I'm a finance UX person versus shoot, I do everything from cars to, but is there a value in either?
Sure. I mean, I'm very biased because I'm very much a generalist, and
Mhm.
I like that camp. I think a good thing about that is you diversify your skills, and then you're also, if something, an industry has budget cuts or something, then you're not really tied to that.
Right.
So
Mhm.
you can always find work. But I also think if you're really excellent at something and you're like, top 5% of people who do that, then you should be a specialist, because then I think you'll always find work. You'll always be able to sell your skills. But yeah, I mean, I think you shouldn't force a specialty. Like if you're really talented at something and you really enjoy it, then maybe go specialty route. But for me, I love doing it all. I think I'm pretty good at most of these things. So I'm able to find work as a generalist.
Right. Kelly, generalist or specialist?
I think it depends on where you're at in
Mm.
your, well, I don't know if I'd say specialist or generalist, but if you're early in your career and you're trying to find a new role, sometimes hiring managers, I mean, if you're trying to get a role in fintech, for example, they'll want to see something very similar to that in your
Right.
portfolio. Or if they want someone who does mobile design, you don't have any mobile design in your portfolio. I mean, my frame of reference is like mostly product UX
Yeah.
stuff. So I feel like that is a little bit challenging, but I also think if you're showing a portfolio that has like visual brand design and product design, and you show like, I don't know, a mobile app design that you did, it doesn't show that you have maybe enough specialty in an area. So that's probably not super helpful answer, but I think it depends on what you're trying to get.
I think it's
with
a
that.
super helpful answer because it points out the fact that even like why, and you were talking about the evolution of even the way we describe roles within UX or design, period, right?
Mm.
That once you get into this world of the people who often like make the initial call on hiring aren't in that field, right? So it has to be
Yeah.
a very specified
Yes.
box. So
Mhm.
therefore, almost the ask is at least tell us you're a specialist, kind of, right? And like
Yeah.
to your point, that's what I'm often saying about portfolios is I'm going to give you a base project in my classes, but you should be thinking about where you want this to go or what's the impact on your portfolio. Exactly what you said. Like, you want to be you want to work on a lot of mobile interfaces, then take whatever project I give you and give a little sidearm,
Yeah.
to that kind of thing. And I do think that that's an interesting dynamic that's maybe it's particular to our industry, but a role, it has to be very specific. So I think it almost by that nature governs it. But I'm with you. I would rather be a jack of all trades because I think you have a wider tool set to solve from too.
Yeah. And also, just to clarify, like I meant within UX, like I think
Yes.
it's very hard to be a generalist across everything.
Right.
I think that's
You're not
the
a
hard
molecular biologist.
Yeah,
on
I'm
the
not doing
side or
sound
anything.
design. I'm
Yeah.
not doing stuff like that. So
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Kelly, how do you find balance in like honing your kind of like current skill set, getting better and better at what you've always been doing or what you're kind of focused on, but then also staying adaptable? Do you have any tips or tricks that you're kind of like, I mean, you work largely in an AI-ish department, right? And
Yeah.
so like that to me is already new horizon land, but like, do tools affect the way that you're staying adaptable? And because we all have to keep
Yeah.
learning, I think, in design. And I'm always curious about how other people are
Yeah, I think especially in the AI world, I think similar for you, the industry is moving really quickly.
Hmm.
So I feel like I have to be like trying new things. Like for example, let me think of an example I can actually talk about. Something that I was working on.
We can just put a big NDA right now. Yeah.
Well, I'll just talk about. So I'm teaching a class in the spring, and one of the things I do, generally at my job is prototyping.
Mm.
So one of the things I'm going to have the students work on is actually like prototyping, but using a tool like Claude or ChatGPT to create the prototype. And I will do that, and then I will, make a clickable prototype for a project that I'm working on.
Yeah.
So that is something that's a little bit new because I can speed up what I'm working on. I can work faster with engineers. Yeah, I think you do have to be really adaptable these days.
Well, and I don't know,
Yeah.
it's almost like one of the most interesting things. I would say if I was having this conversation even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I would be like, no, man, I love my process. And now
Yeah.
I'm actually like very excited about how else could we do this? Like, and I think it's now at my point where I want to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
How are you kind of staying adaptable and
I mean, I think the tools are going to always change. Like
Mhm.
5 years ago, we probably wouldn't be talking about Figma. We'd
Right.
probably working in Sketch, and
Yeah.
like, so you kind of have to. I would never like complete. I think that's a big part of education. Is like sometimes you want to, as a student, you want to focus on the tools because you think that's the important part. And I would argue that's not the important part. Like that's the part that's always going to change. And but I think like the underlying skills there of design thinking are going to be evergreen no matter what happens in the future. And I think like the way things with AI are going right now, they're evolving so fast. And I don't know if anyone can stay on top of it every day. Like I don't particularly want to. I kind of stay a little bit behind the wave just to kind of like
Right.
keep my peace and be able to keep my process and chug along. But at some point, I'm sure things are, sooner than rather than later, things are going to change in our industry.
And it is an industry that is based on, constant change. And I think that's one of the interesting things about teaching is because like, I don't know if you've had the moment of like, you got to play it cool and someone will throw out the name of like a product or something that you should be highly aware of. And you're not, you're like, yeah, that thing. So,
Yeah, that happens.
yes. So on the topic of skills, Kelly, I think in our talk leading up to this, you mentioned that an important part of your awareness and empathy was built on traveling abroad. And I do think that's an interesting, it's easy to get insulary, right? Or insulated as a designer. I've got my process. I like these tools and I'm working on these things. But like, I love the fact that you talked about the value of like getting outside of like what you're comfortable with. I mean, I was telling you the story that like I had undergrad students that had never left the Hill before. And I was like, hey, you guys know there's a town down there, right? But maybe talk a little bit about like how some like foreign experiences, traveling abroad and that kind of stuff have affected your just kind of approach or thinking to maybe this isn't about me in the design work you do.
Yeah, I think that so I started my career working in London. That's when I started working in PR, which was interesting, working with people from all over the world. And I think even working in a big city like London was really good to get that exposure outside of Boulder, or outside of like a smaller place like Boulder. And I think it really also like that's also when I started learning more about working in tech and what the opportunities for different types of roles were, which I maybe wasn't aware of. And at that point too, I wanted to move back to the US, but I wasn't sure where to go. And I heard there were jobs in San Francisco. So that's how I ended up there. But I do think it's really important to get out and talk to other people and talk to people in other industries. So I do talks at design conferences in Europe and other places. And it's really like I've met people in automotive who work in like, who are designers for airlines or, things that I don't really interact with in my day-to-day basis because I think my world, maybe similar for you, is very small. Most of the people I talk to who are designers or in my industry are at Google.
Yeah.
So I think it's nice to talk to other people and hear about what their design problems are and things like that.
I do think our industry, design largely, is an interesting one, and creativity as a whole. It does really need you to get out of your own circles to kind of stay fresh and just kind of on top of things. I actually had a designer that worked for me for a long time, and he used to say that the best designers are cultural aggregators. Like they're very like they can just enter into a scene and like kind of break it down, almost like looking at fashion, right? Like, oh, where's the vibe of this? Is this street? Is this haute couture? Whatever it is. Are there any things that you're doing, Spencer, to kind of like help stay like, or experiences that built like kind of like different impressions for you other than, hey, I live in Boulder and I work on largely North American things? Because you brought up the point, Google is accessed everywhere on Earth, you know, so it's not limited by a zip code.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Switzerland, and then through Google, I moved back for 4 years. Obviously, Swiss design is kind of part of the culture, so I think it's kind of ingrained in it. But I think, like, to build on Kelly's point about traveling, I think it exposes you to how other people solve problems, like the same problems. So I think it kind of opens your eyes, helps you build empathy, which I think is like a core part of our job, is like having empathy for other people. And then, I mean, if you aren't able to travel, I'm a huge documentary fan. I think just watching documentaries, see how other people live their lives, is a big part of that.
Yeah, that's so on point. So I mentioned earlier we're faculty, obviously here shaping the minds of the future. Maybe some say warping, but the minds and skills of designers. And it's always interesting to me how people arrive at teaching. My path to teaching was very funny. If it was not for David, I wouldn't be here. I really didn't like school. As I couldn't wait to get out of design school. And actually, I was like working in firms before I got out. But I'm always interested. How did you guys arrive at design, Kelly? Like, what inspired you to start teaching? Like, did you feel like you wanted to give back, or did you love school? Like, what brought you?
I wouldn't say I really love school either, but I had a very, like, non-traditional way of getting into design. And I had a lot of people who helped me. I did a lot of classes at like UC Berkeley and the California College of Art, kind of just in the evenings because I was working. And then I did a boot camp. This is like the early days of design boot camps. And my mentor, her name's Helen. She's awesome. I still talk to her. This was a while ago. And I think without those people helping me, I wouldn't have been able to make a transition into design the way that I did. It would have taken me a lot longer. And I think that for teaching, I also taught at a boot camp for a long time as well. All my students got jobs, by the way, in
That's
design.
a mark of success.
Yes. And I just think that, especially if you're transitioning to design, I think people can do it from any industry or any background. So I think whatever background you have gives you a unique perspective. So I always think it's really interesting. Like, one of my students used to be a preschool teacher and now she actually works at Google now. But I just think it gives you a unique perspective, and especially for being a UX designer, having, what Spencer was saying, like empathy, I think it just builds a lot of that. So this is kind of a long-winded answer. I think that I just want to help people who are transitioning design or who are trying to get into UX design make that leap.
Yeah, it is a lot of times when I ask people about hey, how did you get into teaching? It is that they have a want to give back or help or assist. Spencer, how'd you end up?
For sure. Yeah, I think it's the similar story. I think, like, I had mentors and teachers and stuff who had a real impact on me, my career, my life. So I think now I hope to have some of that impact on people and like help steer them. I also think, like, our career the industry is only growing, and I think there is room for everyone. So I think if I can help someone out, and it's usually not a lot of work for me. It's like, hey, can you help with review my portfolio or my resume or whatever. It's not a lot of work for me, but it can have a huge impact for them. And like, so to me, it's like a cheap way to have just a big impact.
Yeah, well, and you bring up a really interesting point. I do think I was talking to a photographer friend, and he was talking about like the rise of junior photographers, particularly in the industry of guys who shoot moto and bicycle stuff. And he would make it a point of like, hey, he started seeing new faces like at events and stuff where he was shooting, and he would go buy that person a cup of coffee. And he's like, hey, you got to understand how, like, and he was helping make their industry better. And I do think that as the creative industry as a whole, that's one way we can ensure that talent is coming along, and there is some harmony in all of it. Is like, there is plenty of room for everybody. I mean, I know that's one reason I love Boulder in particular, and TDA, who supports us today. I met John Schoenberg, who's their creative director. And I remember having a meeting with him, and I'd come from the Bay Area, where I always joke it was like prison lunch, because like people would be like, "What are you trying to take from me?" Like what
Yeah.
what they were working on. Nobody would talk about it. And I remember I just sent a couple emails to people in the industry here, and I had a job, so I wasn't looking for work. But they were so open in sharing about that I just felt like that was the healthiest creative industry I'd been in. And Shoney was even in a John Schoenberg was he said to me, yeah, sometimes work will come in the door and we'll be like, that's not a perfect fit for it. And they'll share it with other people. That would not happen in
Yeah.
some other cities. They'd just be like, we're gonna go hire somebody that knows how to do that and keep it
Yeah.
rather than sharing it. And I just felt like it made our industry so well, here it made the creative community just so complete. So kind of like staying in the theme of design education, is there anything that you think today is, and now I'm going to speak from my point of view. I often kind of instruct in design, much from here's where I fucked up, don't do this, and a very trade driven approach. But is there anything that you think is missing in design education today and wish it was different, and maybe are even making a change because you're like, this isn't taught? I mean, we've talked about a few things already today that aren't part of a curriculum, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, in the classes I teach, I want to be as realistic as to what the actual work will look like.
Yep.
So I'm not trying to teach theoretical design stuff. Like I want it to be very applicable and like, hey, you will actually do this in your job. So I think that's one thing. But I think what's missing holistically, I wish there was more of a culture around apprenticeships and
Yeah.
especially and internships too. Because I think graduating from a program, you'll have the skill set. And I know it's hard to get a job, but even getting an internship is hard. And I wish there was apprenticeships where you were kind of working alongside someone while also learning, getting paid. I think is an important part of that as well.
That's that very trade driven approach, and also
Exactly.
highly European. Too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Kelly,
Yeah.
anything you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that having just more opportunities to be like learning on the job, it would be awesome. And one thing that I think is also missing is just, we were talking about like storytelling, presenting, like really working on how you present your work, how you're documenting your work as well. So that whether that's like a presentation or GitHub or whatever you're using, just making sure you're documenting everything along the way. So you don't know when you'll use it. You might not use it for a portfolio, but someone who you're interviewing with might be interested in something you don't have in your portfolio, but you've documented it somewhere else. I've definitely done that before. I say, oh, I don't have this in my portfolio, but you can look here to see this other thing that I've worked on.
You bring up a really interesting point about like, and whether it's tied to like what's missing in design, but I don't think it's communicated enough that it's important for designers to be thinking about their work. We think so, at least I do. I think so project based or the brand I'm working on. And so one of the things that I'm always holding in the back of my mind is I look at things, again, very trade driven. How is this, template's not the right word, but what's the utility of this where I could leverage it again? Not to be same, not to give free work away, but it's an efficiency thing too. And thinking is thinking, if you ask me, and that's valuable. Like, why go discard it? So I am not the most organized human being in the world, but like that is one thing I do not throw things away.
Right.
And I build them in a construct of kind of what you're talking about. So that's really interesting. So we've talked a lot about like kind of the world of making UX, but like where do you guys see kind of UX heading to or extending into? Like, are you excited about it like being more considered in physical spaces and or products or broader experiences? Have you had any opportunity to kind of play beyond browsers and that kind of stuff? Where would you want to see kind of like more UX be involved?
Oh, you mean like more UX in the physical world?
Yeah, more in the beyond the screen kind of deal.
Oh.
And maybe it's still a screen at, even in a car. It's a totally different
Oh, I see what you
experience.
mean. Well, I get really frustrated by places that aren't designed well for walking or that don't consider things like I'm a little obsessive about like trees giving shade and stuff like that and how we don't really do enough of that. I don't know if this really answers your question, but basically how we're designing like physical spaces to be like more hospitable to humans.
Yeah.
Especially when it's getting hotter.
That's exactly what I was asking about.
Yeah.
So.
For example, my kids go to school pretty close to here and the playground's like, there's like the playground in concrete. And it's just when you're there earlier in the year, in the summer, it's so hot. And like if they just planted some trees, this would be way better for everybody.
I love it that you're kind of like considering your space. And I know David has been talked about a few times in here. He used to love to come in and just reorganize rooms. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it was to mess with people or if he was just bored. But I do think really great designers are often wanting to affect their spaces. And it's funny because I work in an office I built, but I've talked to architects and stuff, and they're like, "No, we don't work in the space we built." And it's like, why don't we do more of that as makers?
Mhm.
But where do you want to see kind of?
Yeah, I mean, to build on Kelly, I think like the world is trending towards being more accessible to everyone and opening things up that maybe were closed to certain people before, which I think is really exciting. And I think companies, brands are thinking more about that and taking into consideration. I think as designers, you inherently like look at your environment and like really analyze things in general and like notice things that probably, or maybe some people who aren't designers notice, like door handles. Like once you read Design of Everyday Things, I don't
Yes.
think you can ever like not look at a door handle again. So I think like it's inherently like it's ingrained in your mind. I think it's so cheesy. I'm sorry for quoting Steve Jobs, but like one of his early interviews, it stuck with me. He said something about like, once you notice everything around you is designed by someone who's not smarter than you, then like you can change it or something like that.
Right.
And I think that is like
That's a very Elon kind of phrase thinking now too, right?
I didn't say his name. You did. I didn't break him into this conversation.
We can edit that out.
Yeah.
Post. It's fine. Okay, so we're gonna mix it up here a little bit. I like to do this thing called Fun Time, and these are like a few choose 'em kind of scenarios, and I've done it purposely so that hopefully it fits into your world, and you guys will pick it up quick. And either of you can answer, or you can tennis it if you don't want to answer. Analog or AI?
Analog.
AI.
Thinking or doing?
Doing.
I
Yeah.
thought it was just gonna be yes. High fidelity, mid fidelity, or low fidelity?
I should say low fidelity, but
Yeah,
I do
I was gonna say
high.
high.
I do high fidelity.
High fidelity.
Yeah.
I love low fidelity myself. I know that I just like speed. Paper prototype or coded prototype?
Coded.
Really?
Coded.
Huh.
Mhm.
Dark mode or light mode?
I think the designery answer is dark mode.
Right.
But
I only design in dark mode.
Oh,
Seriously?
Yeah, that's been my world for a while now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
interesting.
Yeah.
Pull down or tag cloud?
Hold down.
Me too. Yes. Okay.
No idea.
Really?
Yeah.
It's funny because there's not many UX conventions I love, but I love the convenience of a pull down, and it always works. And people kind of go, dude, we hate it. It looks old, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's not a good reason. It works.
Yeah.
It works.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So you have to choose one. Add one button or remove one button.
Remove.
Yeah. It's always remove.
Good. And last one, users or people?
I think people.
Well, I should say people. We always talk about users.
Yeah.
We're like, the users want this.
It's
but
such a
they're
funny
actually
thing.
people.
Because I catch that people in conversation, especially UX people, that they'll say you and then people. They have to like, I'm trying to be politically correct here. So, well, that was fun. Thank you. Okay. Challenges in the field. So like, we've talked about it. Design is a constantly evolving field. And not only is it like you're in it and you're working in it, that's kind of hard enough in its own right. But like, what are some of the challenges that UX designers are kind of facing today that you're like, I don't know how they'll continue to handle it. Is it constant growth? Is it constant education? But like, what are some of the biggest challenges that you guys are seeing right now? And like, this is a problem in UX. Are there any?
I mean, I think it's in the industry, and I mean, you're working on it, but AI, I think none of us know what it's going to do to the industry, how it's going
Right.
to change things. I'm sure a lot of people are worried about it, and understandably, including myself. So I don't think you can prepare for that. So it's a bit of uncertainty there.
Yeah. I think, similar. I wonder if I'm working on something that's going to eventually like destroy my career. And I think about that a lot, actually, or destroy the career for design.
Right.
No one really knows what's going to happen. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but I'm hoping that we can work on tools that actually help make our process faster, like making the tedious things faster or
Right.
something like that. Like taking a design system and organizing everything for you. Like that would be great. I don't want to, we're creating tools that create, really awesome illustrations in the style of a specific illustrator who's a real human. And I don't like that aspect of
Right.
the industry that's actually taking the fun work away from us. I don't want to take the fun
The
work
more
away.
creative, right,
Yes.
right, yeah. Well, and I do think that it's such a AI in particular. It comes up every time we talk
Yeah.
about design, and in my own experiences, and this it's funny because if I talk to a copywriter friend, and there are copywriters in here, Haley's here somewhere,
Mhm.
I've found like such a speed or a joy, and it can give me things. And then when I try and have it do visual things, I'm always disappointed. And so if I
Yeah.
talk to my writer friends, I think they have the same.
Yeah.
Like,
For sure.
man, it wrote terrible, blah blah blah. But I did teach one of my very good writing friends how to like really culture his GPT into like, hey, it's writing now like you told it you wanted it to. And so to him, like in some weird ways, it does help with some of that drudgery or tedium that I
Yeah.
don't think humans are great at.
Yeah.
But I too am like very much in the camp of like, let me do the expressive, like kind of fun
Yeah.
stuff. But I've been fortunate, but I said again, I'm thinking I'm super biased. I've tried to have it make like really bitchin' visual things for me, and just I've been mostly dissatisfied with
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add to that. I think like at the end of the day, my experience, it sounds like your experience too, is like the AI has no taste. It's not able to
Mhm.
curate anything.
yes,
So I think my hope is there will always be a role for a human in there. Like it can do like the drudgery, the like concept, stuff like that, but then you're gonna have to take it and make it into actually something good.
right. Well, and that's the one thing I do think that it's a massive advantage from, because like if we're talking about what are challenges in any design field today, there's more work than ever and less time to do it too. So
Mhm.
to me, the thing I'm always after is like, how are we going to get more efficient at the same time, like either maintaining a level of quality, but maybe even getting better,
For sure.
right? Too. So, um, are there any kind of like misconceptions or uh, just mislabeled impressions that you guys feel that UX has kind of stuck to it, that you wish you could kind of dispel? This is your stage to forever set the record straight.
I don't think my parents know what I do
For sure.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
I try and explain to them, or I'll even show them, and they're like, they just really no clue. They think I think they think I maybe like choose colors or something. I don't think they know what they do. I think maybe one perception is that designers are too sensitive.
Mm.
Maybe we are sensitive as a group.
I think we care a lot.
We care a
I think
lot,
it can
yeah.
be misconstrued, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think one misconception is I think like as the designer that you control the user experience, and like I think ultimately you're responsible for it. But I mean, when we're building a product, there are so many people helping us build that product. Like ultimately an engineer is building it. We're working with a product manager who's, helping with the definition of it. So like together we're all designing this end thing. And sure, like capital D designer, that's me.
Yeah.
But everyone in this team is designing this product. And we all, I think like as the actual like capital D designer, you have to kind of enable everyone else to make design decisions and like care about
Yes.
those design decisions so that, an engineer actually like takes the time to implement something to how
Back
you
to your
think-
point of detail.
Exactly.
and stuff,
Exactly.
Yeah. It is interesting to think about the impression of what people think we're doing versus what we're really doing. I think one of the things that whenever I hear UX, I would bet one of the misconceptions, air quotes, back in the day was, oh, you weren't a visual designer, you couldn't make it, or whatever that was. And then people went to these things. But I've met some, I mean, you two are perfect examples, but like highly creative individuals that have made a choice to work in this like very focused thing. I think that's where I look at my more generalist visual brand design kind of world, where it's like it feels like the Wild West sometimes. It's so outer realm and not very cohesive, where and maybe this is a seniority thing and finally doing design as long as I've been doing it, but like I do super appreciate when there's a confinement to something. Not that
For sure.
UX is bounded by anything, but there is a little bit of a degree of focus. I'm working on this user path right now, and that I'm like, oh my God, that sounds like heaven right now, because I'm doing 90 million things. The other entity that you pointed out, and it's not connected to like what's wrong or what's right in the field, but so much of what you both are working on is an organism. And I think that's what we always forget too. Like a brand could be seen as an organism, but I think it's a much more controllable element than something that's developed and opened on 8,000 different screens and consumed by people with I didn't see the button that you put there. You're like, I'm sure you've done the user testing thing and you're like, why are you clicking on that? What, you know? But that world is very interesting to me. And I've really recently started communicating to my clients in particularly web projects, big web projects with lots of content and stuff in it, that you're like, this isn't a simple thing that we're talking about. We're building an organism. So it was interesting to hear you talk about, to bring back that idea that there's a lot of people involved in this. UX is rarely a solo effort.
Absolutely.
Too.
I think also like what we do is so ephemeral. Like
Yeah.
When we launch it, we can like take a screenshot of it and say we did that. And then a couple months later, someone will go in and change something. It's just like always evolving and changing.
Yes.
Which I think is just like kind of nice in my way.
You like that actually?
I think so.
Huh.
Like it kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off. Like I'm not like creating a giant building like downtown that's going to be there for 100 years.
Yeah. No, I've always said that even in the web projects that I get involved with, I often think I will try and communicate the idea that this is a magazine versus a book, right? Like it's going to have a new version in a month or whatever it is. So that's interesting to hear you talk about that. So what are some of the big developments in the next 5 years you guys see coming in UX? Obviously AI, more and more and more. But is there anything else on the horizon? New tools, new ways of thinking?
I imagine like the mediums we're designing for might evolve. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't do any work in wearables or like, was it Apple Vision
Yeah.
Pro and stuff like that? And maybe that stuff will catch on and like the metaverse and stuff like that. Like maybe I assume eventually that stuff's going to come around.
Yeah.
So I could see that being like something like, I think our mediums are constantly evolving though. Like 10 years ago, mobile phones were just like apps were starting to be a thing. So yeah.
Anything you see changing? Big time?
I see a lot changing with hardware. Like our
Yeah.
wearables and headphones and things like that. And then I think also communication apps, I think might be changing, like things with holograms, like better screens, like better ways for us to be in more places at once.
Right.
So I see that evolving a little bit, maybe even how we communicate with each other, which might go a scary direction with AI, for example.
Like
You
I'm
could-
just beaming thoughts to you right now.
Well, maybe like with computer chips.
Yeah.
I can see that happening. I was thinking more like you use AI to automatically write your emails, and then our AIs are just communicating with each other on their own, and we're not involved with that. I could see that happening.
Very interesting.
I hate that.
Yeah, I do too.
I hate that world.
Well, somebody
know.
introduced me to a tool not too long ago, and it would tell you, it would do some sentience around email and your response to things and things like that. I'm like, this thing's so full of shit. And then it was like me to a T. It told me who I was. It was like, we'll probably read the first sentence, may not get to it for 3. It was like, oh my God, how did it know this? So anyway, it was very scary. So just kind of closing out here a little bit in kind of like, teaching, like for either of you or both, I'm interested here, but like what impact, as designers, I think it's really I had a design mentor that once explained to me, like, he reaffirmed the idea to me that what we're doing matters. And it didn't mean like particularly on a global scale, but like it matters to somebody. It could matter to the person paying you. It could matter to the person that actually uses the thing. But like, we all make an impact, whether we do it. Somebody might look at it and go, I hated that experience. That's an impact, right? But like, what impact do you guys hope to make through your work that you're doing and even out and through teaching? Is there a legacy that you hope to leave, or, something that you're kind of like, this is what I would really love some of the outcome of either my work to be remembered as, or
I think I get that way more through my education experience here. I think I would hope, like I kind of touched on earlier, like I would hope to have at some point inspired someone or opened a door for someone or kind of given their career a boost or creative confidence for them or something for them to reach their goals. I think that's like what I care about at the end of the day, because I had people who did that for me. And I think that's like why I'm where I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome. What you got?
Yeah, I think the relationships are really important. So, the people who I meet through teaching has been really awesome. And then also through my work at Google, our community here is really small. And even, outside of Google, the design community in Boulder is really small.
Yeah.
So I think us helping each other is a really good thing. And I like what you were saying about it being really supportive here rather than competitive.
Yeah.
I really see that in Boulder. And I also really see that in the design community in general. And so I think through teaching, helping people find their next thing, or find a new career and pointing them in that direction, I think is one of the reasons I want to do it.
That's awesome.
That's something I was thinking about the other day. Are we the only industry that has like a community aspect? Like,
Yeah.
do like people working in finance, do they go to meetups and like stuff like that? Like, I just feel like
Do plumbers?
yeah, I just feel like
it's called a bar.
it's a design community. Like we kind of have to support each other,
Yeah.
lift each other up, help each other out.
But I think it illustrates the point. Maybe we are a unique industry. Might not be the only one, but we're
sure.
probably one that does seek. Our peers matter to us, mentors matter, and the work we're doing. I think you don't end up in design because, well, it was this or beet farming. Like there's not like, I'm just going to choose. You definitely work in this because you want to. And I think that's a big change of it too,
sure.
right? Like why we do want to have more communal, but I'm thankful for it. That's for sure.
I also think like no matter where you are in your career, there's someone a step behind you and who could use your advice or your guidance. So I think that would be my pitch to other people to like help out other people, support each other. Everyone else can use some help.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, you guys. I really appreciate you being here. Thank
you.
So we haven't done this in a while, but like one thing that is, this is a community. You guys you all have interesting things to say, but like, does anyone out there have questions for Kelly and Spencer while they're here? I know I have a few more, but I want to make sure. Yeah, in the back.
I'm just, you guys have kind of danced around this a lot. It's great. What a day and what your experience work looks like. One or both of you could walk us through a bit like what that.
Yeah.
A lot of meetings. I think, I don't know, I don't spend that much time actually like in Figma designing things. I think to our, I guess, very first point around selling things, like I'm doing a lot of presentations, creating slides, stuff like that to sell ideas. Cross-functional collaboration, I think, is like a key part of our role. So we're often having a lot of team syncs, updates, stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's similar for me. I kind of have like certain days where I'm like, this is my design day. And then I try not have meetings. So I kind of, in design work wise, I'll switch between like Figma, Principle, and After Effects are the main things I use. And we're really big on Google Slides because we work at Google. So we make a lot of presentations. We're pitching a lot. So I would say on a daily basis, I'm pitching my work to somebody in some semi-formal way. And I think people maybe think it's a little more exotic than it actually is. I mean, we do have fun things where we like make cookies at class or whatever that we have.
I heard there's really great food.
Yeah, great
The
food.
food is really good. We do
Nice
design
job.
sprints, which are fun. Sometimes we travel for summits and things like that. But I don't think it's as glamorous as maybe people think it is.
You both have a little bit of a different work environment. You do have some home capacity, and then most of our experiences, you've been in a building somewhere on the Google
I like
campus.
being at the office.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
that helpful?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious, like, what you were like, and where does that output, like, does it get transformed dramatically? You're selling these ideas to stakeholders, but like, what is the art of that thought and that work that you're putting in? Like, what's the art of that trajectory in a big corporation?
Does it end up as like ideas for features or changes or?
I mean, it often does get implemented, but you're usually selling the vision, the North Star, like, hey, this is the grand idea. And then you're brought down to reality of like, okay, we have 6 months to launch this. You're, having one engineer, stuff like that. So I think the constraints come into play. But yeah, I mean, I think both of us probably work at both ends of that spectrum of like the big strategy stuff, like directional things. And then also like, this is what the button should say, and it should be 16 pixels tall, stuff like that.
Right. There's down to the brass tacks.
For sure.
Stuff. And it is funny that you mentioned, how much of your day is distributed from actually like doing meetings and actually doing the work. And that's the thing that I think that gets, at least isn't communicated all the time. usually the more senior you get, you're not doing any less work. You're just having less time to do the
For
work.
sure.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, exactly.
How about anyone else? Questions out there? Yeah.
different one if it's synonymous with like your interaction. Like the other one, say UX and HCI.
Well, I would say like I think they are very similar. When I wouldn't say maybe they're the same because all product designers, UX designers do slightly different things. Like some of them don't do coding, some of them are prototyping. I never did an HCI degree, so I don't know exactly what you learn in those programs, but I assume you're learning like the design principles, design thinking, maybe even like innovation in design things. So I think they do have similarities, but maybe with an HCI background, you can go in many different directions, maybe into front end design or
Mm.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the kind of nice thing about what we do is like it's very fluid about your skill sets. Like I know some people like you really lean in on prototyping. Other people do no prototyping and really lean in on visual design or research or UX writing, things like that.
Mhm.
So I think like HCI, I imagine like leans more towards the coding side of
That's what I
the
would be.
experience.
That helpful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Rich in the back.
Yeah. I have a question. Working at a big company, how do you balance your own like personal standards?
Mm. Ooh, that's a
I
good
think that I don't know if that's
question.
constrained even to a big entity, but
No, that's
yeah,
true.
I think designers always face moral
Yeah.
choices.
I mean, I for sure, I don't think I've ever been put in like an unethical decision. And like, at least the things I've been
Mhm.
privy to, I don't think I've ever been like towing areas of like, I don't feel good about this. But I would say like, if I was, I think like it's your kind of your job, especially as the
Mhm.
representative of the user, like you have to speak up and say these things like, I mean, I guess now that I think about it, like, probably not what Rich is thinking about, but like, I work on growth and monetization. Like, there's like a lot of like dark patterns you could introduce in that world. And I think often product managers are the first to jump to that stuff. So I
Mm.
think it's kind of my job to say like, I don't think that's very user centric, like,
Mhm.
and justify like, hey, why don't we do this instead?
Huh. Interesting. Kelly, any?
I wouldn't say ever been put in like an unethical situation, but I think there are situations that have come up when I've thought, oh, this might not make users trust us, or
Mm.
it might be a privacy implication. We talk about that a lot. And I think it's just part of your role as a UX designer to bring up those issues. And I think if you're working somewhere that wants to gloss over something privacy or ethics wise, then maybe you should reconsider working there.
Yeah.
But I've never felt uncomfortable bringing something like that up. And
Well,
I've been
and you
listened to.
illustrate a point about some of the phenomenon I've witnessed in probably the last 15 years. I've watched my clients' investment change. And I would say that in probably early on in my career, people were like, I work here, you just tell us what we should do. And now I meet people that are like really invested. And I hear you talk about, like, hey, maybe these would be challenging to privacy or whatever that is. But to me, that's if you look at the stock and trade of a brand like Google, that is your brand, right? Do you trust us? We're ubiquitous. We're all in these places. And I think that's just a good example of brand kind of like becoming product in some weird way, because you are a steward at that point, right? Like, hey, I'm trying to help uphold, and that's what I've noticed amongst some of my inner like company stakeholders now is they're like passionate and they really do care about like what they're working on. And I've even seen that with designers leaving, studio, where we talked early on that
Mhm.
when studio first opened, most of our designers went to agencies, and now it's like almost everybody goes to a Google or
Mhm.
Uber or whatever it is. And they're working on that side, and they really care about like what they're working on. And that's been a really interesting thing, because like I used to meet people in agencies, and there are a lot of people like me, ADD, and you want to work on 50 different things during the day. And that's another change I've seen in designers today, is they want to have a little bit more of a core focus. I want some ownership. And so that's interesting to hear you talk about it almost from a owner perspective of the
Yeah.
brand stewardship.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right, one more. Anyone? Yeah, here in the middle.
Mhm. Mhm.
Do you have a walk-on song?
I should.
You should. Everyone should have a
Um,
walk-on song.
There's this really great book called Demystifying Public Speaking. It's one of those books from, I think it's from a book apart. They're short. And I found that book really helpful because it helps you uncover like what makes you uncomfortable about speaking. Because everyone has the information in them somewhere. And maybe it's helpful for me, it's helpful to know like what are the like 5 core points I want to get through, but not have them memorized. So usually I'll write it down on a piece of paper. So I'll be going through my presentation, but I want to make sure I've touched on these 5 things or I've communicated these 5 things.
And that's right, riding shotgun next to you. As
Yeah,
you're
it's
kind
like
of
right
riding.
next
Yeah.
to me. I work remote, so usually I'm not in person with people when I'm pitching. Sometimes I do. It depends if it's like a bigger thing. So I wouldn't say, we are lucky we work with really nice people. So I've never been in a situation where I'm like, okay, I need to really prepare for this discussion. It's going to be hard. That usually doesn't happen.
Do you need anything for prep?
I am like painfully shy, deeply uncomfortable public speaking.
You're
Like,
doing
this is my
wonderful right
nightmare
now,
right
by
now.
the way.
And I told my students
You're
this
doing
day one.
great.
I'm like, if I pass out in the middle of the class, call my wife. So I think like practice and like, for me at least, that's when like I think one of the reasons I was also excited about teaching is like, hey, I'm gonna have to stand in front of 14, super cool students staring at me, judging me.
Right.
And like that's one way I'm gonna have to get out of this and like grow and build my skill set. So yeah.
And you do practice.
I do practice. Yeah.
It's one thing I've worked with lots of great presenters. I've never been able to do the fake. And when we get to this side, I'm thinking about it all the time.
For
I'll
sure.
be like, the inner argument, but I'm more on the 5 points
Yeah.
on the side of things. Make sure I get through those.
No, I
those
definitely
2
over
points.
prepare for things.
That's good. Well, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Awesome
Thank
job.
you.
And thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for being the awesome community that you are. This is a First Friday event. If you're around in Boulder tonight, do go up and check out Open Studios. So make sure you support the creative community in that way. Big thank you to our friends, Buck Ross, Ryan. Thank you so much. Coop does all the production for us on our sound stuff. You can follow us on Instagram at Caffeinated Mornings, and then caffmornings.com. You can always check that to see who's coming up. And speaking of, no show in January, but please join us back in February. It sounds like a long time away. I will miss you all. But we will be coming back with a sound designer. Funny that you brought that up, Connor Moore, and he does some very interesting work. So please join us back for that. I would love to see you all here. Love you all. Thank you so much. Good job, you guys.
Thank you.